Hey everybody, welcome to the trek. Hey, um, we have a change of staff going on right now. And behind the curtain, Mr. Wizard, will you pay us a visit? Hello? Here you go.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so. What's going on, everybody?
Look at who we have, you guys.
Yep. Jay's in the background now. I'm trying to learn how to do this. Oh man.
You're doing a great job. You really
hmm
are.
No, it's crazy.
Yeah,
But
I bet. A lot of
it's gonna.
details, isn't there?
Oh man, I'm excited about tonight's show. It's gonna be awesome.
It is going to be awesome. So you guys take notes and make sure that you write down any questions to ask at the Q&A.
hmm
And if you put them in the chat, we can gather them too, so we don't miss them. Hopefully, somebody can give them to me.
Yeah,
Right.
we'll figure that out.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much.
All right.
Just
Good
wanted to
luck.
introduce you.
Bye
Yeah.
bye.
Okay. So, Shelley has been promoted to a very special position, and we're not ready to reveal that just yet. So, but for now, Jay is the man behind the screen, and I'm hoping he's there forever because he's awesome too. And all right, and so I wanted to talk to you about the Trara experiences that are happening. So ever since Thomas gave us that prayer, we've been giving that. Trudy's been giving that to all the recipients as we're processing their situation, and we've been seeing miracles. I mean, every single one has been more than it could have been otherwise. It's been glorious. It's been just a beautiful, heartfelt situation, you know. And sometimes in the end, they decided they didn't need the money. But, you know, if you're in the house and you listen to the announcements, you heard the one that happened today. So beautiful. All right. And if you haven't found the Trara Book of Miracles page on Telegram, maybe somebody could put the link in the chat. Any one of you, any one of the trekkers, if you can put that link in too, that'd be great so people can find it, because the testimonies are in there. And it's actually going to be a book. We will make it into a book, and you'll be able to get it when you come to the ranch, because it's our memoirs, right? It's what we went through together and what you did. We took care of people that were going to fall through the cracks before Nasara kicked off, and it is imminent again. Yes, it is, but that's all I can say. So I do want to say, I want to talk to Thomas tonight about Thursday, about how the social media and AT&T is supposed to go down. And that's 4/4, and they're calling it curtain call. So maybe we can talk about that tonight. I don't know for sure if that could be the EAS. I really don't have any information direct about it. All right. But anyway, I think it's kind of exciting what's about to happen. Okay. All right. Without further ado, we're going to bring in Thomas B, the man, Thomas B the third. And welcome, Thomas. We're excited about what you're going to offer tonight.
It's great to be back. Thank you so much for the invite.
All right. So we didn't really give you enough time to do the whole thing last time. So this time you're going to do a summary and do part 2 with slides, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Did you hear what I said about Thursday being there's major social medias and associated with Meta that are going to go down this Thursday?
Mm-hmm.
So let me see. Did you see that post in the house?
I have seen that. I don't have any inside track on it, but I am certain after what we're going to hear tonight that anything is possible.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm excited then. All right. Okay, well, I'm going to let you take it away and just take your liberties, and I will bow out of the picture. All right, we'll see you in just a little bit.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Teresa. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, well, hello, everyone, and it's good to be back again. I do have a bit to cover tonight, and I'm going to go ahead and just start off. Tonight, I'm going to start off by basically outing myself. And what I mean by that is I am outing myself as a bogan. Now, many people in the West are not familiar with what I'm talking about here. However, Australians have created an entire subculture around the name bogan. And this is also kind of bleeds over into parts of Europe as well. So my surname is Bogan. And I want to assure you that this is not a bad word, although there are plenty of synonymous terms that are extensive in nature. In fact, I've seen hundreds of ideas about what a bogan is, and they are all derogatory in nature, I might add. So it's just basically used to describe a simpleton, an idiot, and much, much worse. So hopefully tonight I am going to demonstrate a different take on boganhood in general. Sometimes when I have encountered people from Australia or from parts of Europe, and they find out that my last name is Bogan, they want me to prove it. They want to see my ID. They want to take a picture with me. It's almost like a trophy picture. So if that is how you feel tonight, feel free to take a snapshot and let everyone know that you have heard from an actual bogan tonight. Now, I think it's all about perspective. Just want to point this out, that my brave ancestors bore the name of bogan, and they were completely unaware of this fact. Phonetically, in Hebrew, which I am very drawn to, bogan is actually a command to come into the garden. Sort of like, get your butt in here right now. And I am very much into going back into the area that we know as the garden, just to begin afresh and begin all over again. I think that that is what we are about to see take place upon the earth. So tonight, I am reclaiming the bogan name for my ancestors, and I want to point out that even God can use a bogan to deliver a very important message, and I believe that that is what we are going to be hearing here tonight. So, as Teresa pointed out, I am going to start with a brief review of what we talked about last week. If I won't go into the detail that I went into last week about some of the two Bible stories, but I want to start out by talking about simple gematria. This is one of the things that I will be using tonight. It is a cipher. The simple gematria cipher is probably the most common one that is used right now, and it's like this: A equals 1, P equals 2, C equals 3, and it's all plus 1 until you get to Z, which is 26. So the way that I come up with these numbers is you take a number, you take a word or a phrase, and you associate these simple gematria numbers to that phrase, and you come up with a number. Now, words in Hebrew, in Greek, they are also numbers as well, because the letters double as numbers, and that is what we are going to be looking at tonight. A couple of the simple rules about this: it's perfectly permissible to look at these words of these numbers forward and then backwards, and you can also drop zeros and come up with other meanings as well. And what I normally do is I tag these numbers that I come up with in this way to the Strong's Exhaustive Concordance of the Bible. And that is a book that contains all of the words in the Bible, every single one. And they are in alphabetical order, and they have a number associated with them according to that setup and arrangement. And so you will have New Testament Greek words and you will have Old Testament Hebrew words. And so generally speaking, I will have 2 different words that I can choose from when I'm looking at this. And so we're going to usually talk about a couple of them. They don't always resonate. I want you to understand this is a not at all an exact science, but there are many synchronicities. There are many cosmic connections. This is almost like a secret code language that I have been really looking into deeply for the last 10 years. And the reason I do this is because the dark hats, the deep state, they use these numbers against us because they have to tell us what they're going to do before they do it. They just don't have to tell us in our own language or in a way that we can readily understand. So a lot of times they do use numbers, and they do it in this way. You will see that if you're watching a movie, for example, you might come across an address for maybe a license plate on a car. Those are real fast. They might show that to you for a second or two. You might see a clock with a number on it. Those numbers are all programs that are being put out to tell you what they are up to. So the next time you're watching a movie, you see a number, if you can, take it to the Strong's Exhaustive Concordance and look it up, see what it might mean. There are parallel meanings, just so you know, to current number patterns. I just described what that might look like. Sometimes even in headlines of newspapers, if we even look at those anymore. But any internet headline that you see that has a number in it, that is a program. It is not even meaningful for the most part. It is just a number sequence that is a program to tell you some kind of a secret message. Now we're going to look at slide number 1 right now. And this is just going to be an example of what I am talking about when it comes to these, the way that these are arranged. And so when we see slide number 1, what we are going to be viewing is the name of God. We looked at that last week, and this is actually the Tetragrammaton. I just kind of made a little fancier slide to point out a few things. This is a Yod, a Hey, a Vav, and a Hey. You read from right to left in Hebrew. So that little letter that looks like it's up in the air, that is a Yod. Next to it, it looks like it has a detached portion to it. That is a Hey. Then you have a solid one that is a Vav and another Hey. So you actually have 3 letters in the name of God. Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. Collectively, they add up to the number 26. A Yod is a 10. A Hey is a 5, a Vav is a 6, and a Hey is another 5, so that gives us a 26. I want to also point out that in the upper left-hand corner, you will see a modern-looking Aleph today, and that is actually made up of 3 components. You can see, if you use your imagination, there's a little Yod over there on the right-hand side, and on the bottom left side of it, there is another Yod. And then in the middle, there is a Vav there. So that is a 10, a 6, and a 10. And this is another code in the Hebrew Aleph Bet, which tells us that the very first letter is actually encoding this name of God within it. If you look at 2 plus 6, that gives us an 8. And of course, we know that that is a sign to us as the infinity sign. And we certainly know that this being that we call God is definitely infinite in nature. Now, I pointed out last week that Greg Braden has mentioned to us in his research about how this particular name is encoded into our very DNA, and it is done through the numbers, by the way. You do not have Hebrew letters written inside of your body, but in every single part of your DNA, you do have this 10565 encoded into it, which basically means that the name of God, this very name of God, is written inside of you in countless numbers. So it is basically tattooed onto your DNA in a numerical way. And I wanted to also point out that Greg Braden mentioned to us that the opening sequence of our DNA, which is a few billion characters in length. It opens up with the message, God eternal within the body. I mentioned that last week, but it bears repeating. Basically, we are an autographed copy of our own unique book of life based on what I just told you. So who did this? Well, the Creator did this. The Creator is also the producer, the developer, the author, and the finisher of our faith. The Bible tells us that. The master programmer, I might add, of this holographic matrix that we find ourselves in. Now, in Ephesians chapter 2, I love that as I was parsing a verse in there, it says that we are seated in heavenly places in Christ. And what this is saying to us, it is in the aorist tense or the present tense. And this basically reminds me of Neo in the Matrix as he is sitting in that chair, remember, with the cable coming out of the back of his neck as he is projecting himself into the world that he was living out. And that is much like what I believe we are doing ourselves right now. In this reality, it is quite potential that we exist in the 3D shadow of a higher dimension. And so, in my estimation, based on the writings of quantum physicists like Tom Campbell, for example, and others, I believe that we live in a quantum simulation. And I would like to add to that simulators, they are used to allow us to train for real life experiences and missions. Now, if I'm going to learn how to fly a plane, and I don't know how to, I can drive real well, but don't put me in the cockpit of a plane and ask me just to take off. I'm going to need to fly that thing and land that thing and crash that thing several times in a simulator before I feel comfortable in getting in it to actually fly. So I believe that right now we are all at a point of reaching a critical point in our mission and in our mission training. And so I just wanted to point out that we are getting ready, and these signs that we are about to talk about again here tonight are all part of that training. Now I'm going to begin by looking at some biblical connections once again to these eclipses. I covered it in detail last week, and again, I'm just going to briefly go over this. If you would like to have deeper insight into what these stories are about, I would recommend that you go back and watch the replay of that from last week. Now, solar eclipses, they are biblical signs, and they are actually, in my opinion, and in the opinion of others that I have heard as well, they are the sign of Jonah. We had talked last week about how many believe that the sign of Jonah was referring to Jesus going into the earth for 3 days and 3 nights to lead captivity captive. Well, that certainly is part of my belief system, but I don't see that as the sign of Jonah, because in order for a sign to be effective, you have to be able to see it. And no one during that time was able to see any of those events taking place. So now we're going to look briefly at the Jonah story once again. I mentioned last week that Jonah was a prophet. He was called by God to go to Assyria to speak to the king of Nineveh and to tell him that his nation was about to be destroyed, about to be judged because of the evil and the wicked things that were going on there. And Jonah did not want to do this because he didn't like the Assyrians at all, because of how they had treated some of his people years prior. They were very brutal, these soldiers were, and they would do things like bury you up to your neck and let ants eat you alive. These were the sort of things that they would do, among many, many other far worse things than that, if you can imagine. And so Jonah was not into that. He did not want to go to Nineveh. He did not want to tell these people to repent because he wanted to see them actually be destroyed. In the end, he tried to run from God. We all know that story. Didn't work out well for him. He ended up being tossed overboard and swallowed by a whale that he spent 3 days and 3 nights inside of, fighting for his life, until finally on the 3rd day he cried out to God and prayed and asked for mercy. And based on that, God allowed this whale to spit him up on the shore. He had to make his way over to Nineveh pronto before something much worse happened to him. And that is basically the story. Now, why 40 days? Because Jonah arrived 40 days before the Day of Atonement, or the Day of Judgment. And he was fully expecting that God was going to wipe this civilization out based on what they had been up to. And he just went out and sat in a tent and waited for the fireworks to fall 40 days later. That is basically the story of Jonah. But I want to point out to you that it is very important for us to understand that the story of Jonah, it's not about Jonah at all. You see, Jonah is just the noise. He's just the messenger boy, really, in this story. It's not about Jonah. It's not even about Nineveh, for that matter. But this story is about a warning to out-of-control people. And these eclipses are timed exactly. We know this because we hear about it in our modern day times. When the next event like this will happen, we know about it years in advance. They did not have the technologies like Google Earth Map, or they didn't have, all of these technologies that can look at the sky. And so they weren't aware of this. I want to point out that the timing, the divine timing of this was just pristine, because Jonah gets told to go do something. He runs away from that. That ate up some time. He ends up on the ship. That eats up some time. He's in the belly of a whale. That eats up 3 days. Gets thrown up on the shore. Has to walk to Nineveh. That took time. But just as he got there, a total eclipse was taking place directly overhead. And that is one of the things that got everyone's attention there. And that is what caused them to begin to think about the message that Jonah was there to deliver. I believe that really the message that we're seeing here with Jonah himself is more about a forgiveness lesson, because Jonah was not at all into forgiveness of these people. And I find that that is perhaps something that is part of the undercurrent of this story that we don't often hear about. Now, the name Jonah, it actually means dove. Dove is a symbol of the Holy Spirit. It's a symbol of peace, isn't it? Guess what? Doves are not birds of prey. There are no attack doves, in other words. There might be attack monkeys, no attack doves. But what is advantageous about this is that doves can fly. And by being up in the air, you have the potential to experience a bird's eye view. And that is part of the message that I want to point out in the story. Now, remember last week, we were looking at some of these eclipses and how they played out. We will look at them again here briefly. But the first eclipse that occurred in 2017 actually passed over 7 cities in the United States named Salem. This is, of course, a code for the word Jerusalem. Jerusalem. In our connection to Jerusalem, besides the political connections, look at the word Jerusalem next time you see it, and right in the dead center of it are the words, are 3 letters that are very recognizable to us here in America, and they are the letters USA. This is a code as well. So the other thing that I found as I began to even look deeper into my research to present to you tonight is that there are more than 7 Ninevehs. There are actually 11 Ninevehs in the United States. One of them is spelled slightly different, but there are 11 Ninevehs in the United States. And what I find to be interesting about this is we have a 7 and we have 11. So this is a number that I love to look at. We could be looking at it as 7-11. We can look at it backwards, 11-7. What I mentioned last week is the eclipse that we are all tracking and looking at that will occur on April the 8th in just a few short days. That will actually make landfall in Mexico at 11:07 a.m. So there we have it, another 11:07. If we look 11:07 up in the Strong's Concordance, by the way, that word number means to make known, to make known. So something is being revealed to us here. If we take the 0 out of that, we drop that in 11:07, we now have 117 again. That is the number, or the word number. The number of this word actually is 117, but the word itself, I'm sorry, is majestic. So we have to make known, we have majestic, and then if we flip 11:7, we go to number 711. That's a very important number to us right now, and that is the meaning best counsel. So as I said on Monday, I believe that these are telling us a little message, and that is to make known the best majestic counsel available. And that is what I am here to do with you tonight. I want to give you good counsel and wise counsel about these eclipses, and I want to show you the possibilities, but I want to bypass all of the fear that has been piled on top of this message. 20 million videos out there on all of the platforms talking about this, and many of them are just enough to scare the living daylights out of you. So in the end of the Jonah story, God spared Nineveh because they repented. Now, I want to mention again that this word repent, it gets a bad rap. It is a non-threatening word. It simply means just stop. If you're doing something that you're not supposed to do, just stop it. It also means turn around, make an about face, head in the opposite direction, and do the right things. And that is what we are being called to do. It's not any kind of a religious thing where we have to do religious rituals. It is just simply about making better choices about our lifestyles. Now, Nineveh in the end chose peace via an ancient technology that I am calling sackcloth and ashes. It's not actually a technology, however, it was quite effective in getting God's attention and turning their situation around. Today, we might call sackcloth and ashes burlap and burnt things. What sackcloth basically was, it was clothing that was made out of black goat hair. It was quite uncomfortable to wear. It would be much like having a burlap t-shirt or something. You just don't want to wear that. And they would sit in ashes, and they would put ashes on their head. And this was just basically their sign of desolation and ruin. This is kind of like them realizing that they were about to have everything end for them. And so this was a counter move, a desperate counter move. And it was an attempt to get God's attention and to show that they were willing to change. So in other words, this is a last chance symbol or signaling. It's all about the last chance. Sometimes we feel like we have another one coming. In this situation, it is the end of the line. And that is what these marks that are being made over our country through these ancient Hebrew letters are telling us. It's the end of the line. It's an end of the line warning. It's like a danger Will Robinson moment. And we are receiving the warning of Nineveh in America right now. And it will be finalized on the 8th of April. So I want you to consider that it is also phoenix symbolism, because we are entitled, not really in the way that we just are entitled to receive this, but based on our responses. We may be entitled to beauty for ashes. And again, that will be based on proper choices being made. When you get a warning such as this, It is time to pay attention. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit right now about some potential good news. And what we're going to look at right now is the next slide. And the next slide is what we looked at last week. It is the Revelation 12 sign. Now, again, this is an astrological event that did play out on September the 23rd of 2017. You may not even have noticed it, but it was playing out right over your heads on that date. And so the Revelation 12 sign, what I want to point out about that right now, if you can notice it, I want to talk about beginnings and endings that are being projected through these eclipses and through the messages that of all the little the data fragments that we will be looking at. So look really closely at the Revelation 12 sign. What you're seeing here is the constellation Virgo, the constellation Leo. It gives you a description right there about what Revelation 12 says, and all of it pertains to what played out in the sky. This woman is clothed with the sun because this event is happening in the constellation of Virgo. Her left foot has the moon right there, so the moon is at her feet. She is crowned with 12 stars. 3 of them are wandering planets or wandering stars. And if you look at them closely, what you see is Venus, Mars, and Mercury. Now, also, the other aspect that played out was her pregnancy, and this was taking place through the planet Jupiter that had been in her womb or stomach area for approximately 9 months, and it was in retrograde, just spinning around in that area. And on this particular day of September 23, 2017, Jupiter begins to come out of her womb, and this is basically a sign of a birth. So what I want you to notice is the position of Venus and the position of Jupiter in this slide. Notice that this is another beginning and another ending. You have Venus on the far right, you have Jupiter basically on the far left. Just bear that in mind. We'll look at that again here briefly. What is interesting, if you read further in Revelation 12 here, it talks about the child that was born, and the child was snatched up. This is the word used, snatched. And this is actually very interesting to me because it is the word in the Greek New Testament, harpazo. And harpazo is the word that we use for the idea of the rapture. Now, I am not calling the rapture. I am not even really settled on where I stand with that right now. After studying Darbyism from the 1800s, where we basically got the idea for the rapture, but anything goes right now, and we're going to see that. What I want to point out about Jupiter is that Jupiter has some symbolic meaning to us. Has the meaning of our higher self. It can actually mean higher knowledge. It can mean abundance. It can also mean spiritual growth. Even the idea of morality is tied to Jupiter. And Jupiter is known, in some circles anyway, as the planet of faith. And this is the faith that things are about to turn around for ultimate good. So we will look a little bit deeper into this. And we'll do that right now by looking at slide number 3. And thank you so much for bringing that up there, Jay. In slide number 3, what we're seeing here now, this is basically the view that people will be seeing from the path of totality. So if you are in an area in America where you will be able to see the full eclipse, what you are going to be noticing is Jupiter is going to be in the upper right there, and you have Venus that is beneath that. I found it to be kind of interesting, maybe a little stretch here, but it seems like Venus is in and around the 4 o'clock position to me. And I would say that Jupiter is in the 10 o'clock position. So this is a big 10-4 to me. And if you look, I put in this slide some of the aspects of Jupiter. None of those look very scary to me. And then if we look at the aspects of Venus, very similar thing happening right there. These are positive things. And so I see, like the idea of Venus, for example, it has this idea of pleasure, of love, of romance, of harmony and beauty. There is an aspect of connection, be it partnership or marriage. So I believe that God put all of this stuff up in the sky, all of the demonic attachments that people like to hang on to through certain faiths. Those are just superimposed over all of this, okay? Now, respectfully, I want to tell you that if you do a search, just do a Google search on how many Christian denominations are there, you're going to find that there are somewhere in the neighborhood of 50,000 unique Christian denominations. And what this tells us is that all of this information has the potential to have 50,000 opinions, okay? So I am the messenger of this. I have my certain unique beliefs on all of it, but I ask that you would have an open mind as you continue to listen to what is laid out here. This planetary alignment that we're looking at in the slide right here, it is a positive omen. It is a positive omen of hope. Now, we also see this 12P Pons-Brooks comet. That is known now as the Devil's Comet. And the Devil's Comet, it's called that because it has a split tail. You will also apparently be able to see this during that path of totality. So watch for that as well. What does it possibly mean? Well, here's a couple clues. The Pons-Brooks Comet. If you look this up in simple gematria, what you will find is that it has a numerical value of 200 even. So 200 even, and what this means is there are other 200s, just a couple that I'm going to give you right now as by means of giving you a couple clues. One is prepare yourself. So prepare yourself also equals 200 in simple gematria. I find that to be a bit of a message to us today. And believe it or not, another term that has the value of 200 is a very familiar term, 10 days of darkness. For what it's worth, I find that to be quite interesting. So when facing possible judgment, and this is what we are being told that we can be looking for in this event, when we are facing judgment, when we are facing the possibility of a war, this is what they're planning for, a war, a world war. I would say that in this case, trusting divinity is not at all naive. See, trusting God or Yahuwah is logical at this point. It's extremely logical. And that is the position that I take. So we will end slide 3 right here. I'm going to go a little bit off topic just for a second, but it is related to what I will lay out next. So many of us have been tracking the biblical Mandela effect. You may be aware of that. You may not be aware of it. The most recognizable edit that has taken place in the Bible, and it's happened in Bibles across the board. We will look at Isaiah 11:6. I'm not going to pull it up and look at it to read it, but this is very familiar to many of us. It talks about the lion laying down with the lamb. It's talking about a time of world peace, where this will be a reality. The lion shall lie down with the lamb. If you look in your Bible and you look at Isaiah 11:6 now, you are not going to see that any longer. It now says the wolf will lie down with the lamb. There are hundreds, literally hundreds of changes or edits that have taken place in the Bible. Many of us who have committed passages, by the way, to memory are quite baffled by this, because we know fully well what it said at one point in time. I want you to consider one thing. Going from the lion to the wolf is like going from the king of the jungle to a nocturnal predator. Okay? Something is really off about this. But here are some important points that I want to bring out to give you hope about this. First of all, we now live in a timeline where it was always wolf. It was always wolf in this timeline. I have looked at a Bible from the 1800s that has this change in it as well. I could not believe it. I thought for sure that that one would say lion. Nope, it did not. Let's think about this logically. Nobody snuck into our homes, stole our Bibles, reprinted them, and snuck them back in. Can you agree with me on that? Also, I think you might agree that God does not change. There is no wavering in who God is. But I'm going to suggest to you that the book about him did change. Now, Jesus is the Word made flesh. We know this. But he is the spoken word, not the printed word. Okay? Our relationship is not with a book. It is with him. Prayerfully consider this. This makes these eclipses much more meaningful, because the story in the sky has not changed. I mentioned astrotheology last week. I think I mentioned that in the Q&A. I mentioned Santos Bonacci. You might want to look him up on YouTube, Google him, listen to what the man has to say. He will show you how the Bible stories are all playing out in the sky. And I will tell you that those have not been affected by any biblical Mandela effect changes. Okay, so I'm going to move on from there. We're going to look at slide number 4. And slide number 4, it gives us the what I call the Esther crown dates. These are the dates in our time frame. These 4 eclipses that are going to be playing out. You can look at the dates right there. You can see that one takes place on 3/25. We have one upcoming on 4/8. We have another one that will be happening in September on the 18th of this year. And then there's also another one in October on the 2nd of 2024. I wanted to just give you a Cliff Note version of the Esther story. I don't really think I got to that in its entirety last week, but just to put it in a nutshell, if I can. Esther was a Hebrew woman, very beautiful, both inside and out. She was very well loved. She was raised by her cousin Mordecai. Now, the king, in this particular instance, was looking for another bride, another queen. There's a long story to that. I won't get into it. But Esther fit into this story, and the king was quite enamored by her. And after 10 months of a 12-month preparation for him, he kind of cut it short and made her the queen. So what we had here in the story is an antagonist by the name of Haman, and there was some bad stuff going on between Haman and the cousin Mordecai. This ended up in some trickery that Haman pulled on the king to cause the Jews to all be killed as a result. And so it all fell down basically to Esther, and Esther risked her life going into the king unannounced. This was actually an offense that could be resulting in the death, instant death of someone. She was willing to risk her life to do this, to save her people. In the end, it did work out, and she set up a plan to basically deal with this Haman character. And the plan ended up causing Haman and all of his co-conspirators to be killed in the very way that they had devised for the Hebrews to be killed. It's quite a gruesome thing that was going to happen. I don't like to talk about it. It just gives me chills. So I would invite you to go ahead and read that story in the book of Esther, just to kind of get caught up on it. But that's as far as I'm going to go with that. We are going to look at slide number 5 right now. That's going to give us some of these Strong's Concordance word numbers. I'm putting them up here just so that you can see them, because when I talk to you about numbers, there's a tendency to just get all fuzzy in your mind. Numbers are abstract to us many, many times when we're just hearing them spit out like this. So I'm putting this up here. Maybe you can follow along with some of it. There are a few additional numbers that I'm going to add here as well, but this will help you just to not be losing your ability to focus on these numbers. We were looking at the dates in that last slide, weren't we? And the first date that we saw in these 4 eclipses, and these 4 eclipses, by the way, exactly mirror the eclipses that happened in Esther's day. And so the Jonah story and the Esther story are greatly connected together, and they are showing us a program that we can follow in order to be successful when we are in times such as these. Let's look at the date 325. So that would be March the 25th. We just surpassed that. We did have, I believe it was a lunar eclipse on the Feast of Purim. And the Purim story is about Esther. All of this is interconnected. But when we look at the Strong's number 325, this means to yield, to deliver, or to give up. And I told you at the beginning that we can also mirror these numbers or flip them or reverse them. So that would mean that 325 now is 523. And that is a word that means to ask or demand something back. It also means a tribe. We are a tribe here in this group tonight, and we are going to be asking for something back. Now we're going to look at 4-8. This is the event that will be happening in just a few days. If we look at the gematria based on that number, that date number 408, we get the meaning man of victory. I would say that this is man or woman of victory. This is about humanity being victorious. And if we mirror or flip that number, we go from 408 to 804. And that carries the meaning certain, secure, and unfailing. Now, again, I drop the 0. This is part of what we do. We get a 48. And the number 48 in Strong's Concordance means to purify or to cleanse from defilement. This is the hope of what we are about to experience. And interestingly, if you look at the number 84, which is the mirror of 48, this is the wing of a bird, such as a dove, by the way. Or it could also be the idea of the wing of God, which is synonymous with the idea of shelter. So this is all very important to what we will be looking at here as I sum that part up. Now there's a partial lunar eclipse that will take place, as I mentioned, on September the 18th of this year. If we look at 9/18, Based on that date, this means to mend or to repair. And it is also, by the way, the name Nathaniel. Now, Nathaniel was an apostle of Jesus Christ. Also, if we carry this into the fourth eclipse of this year, that will be taking place on October the 2nd, we get some numbers out of this, don't we? We get a 1002, and that is actually meaning a palace or a temple. It also means a dart or a javelin. I want to point out that a dart or a javelin is a weapon that you send to a target. So we could just be looking at the hint of a weapon system here. If we want to mirror the number 1002, of course, we're going to end up with 2001. That is actually the year that some weapons were sent in to some buildings in New York City, if you recall. Also, 2001, of all things, it means the name Haman. I just was blown away by the chances of that happening. So we have Haman making an appearance with the idea of 2001. And we also have the idea of to grow stronger. And that is one of the second meanings. So we have Haman, we have to grow stronger when we are looking at the number 2001. Now, I'm going to drop one of the zeros. We'll look at 201. That actually means an audience or a court for hearing cases. And I feel like we are sort of in that situation right here, right now. You are all hearing the evidence laid out. And this is not anything that is on trial other than our ability to make a choice about what direction we want to go in. Also, the number 102, it means a horde or an army. And if we drop the 0 in that, we get the number 12, and that means bottomless pit or destruction. So that's a lot of fragments, a lot of ideas to consider. I'm just going to kind of put it together in a simple way. Based on these word meanings that I just laid out to you, when we give up our own sinfulness, and I believe that sin, I heard a great acronym, self-induced narcissism. These are things that we do against ourselves and against other people that are just not beneficial. This is what sin is. Okay, so when we give up our self-induced narcissism as a tribe, we can demand something back. This is what we are being told in these hidden fragments that I believe are being revealed for the first time ever. I've never heard anybody bring this information to light. We can demand something back, as in our country, as in our freedom, okay? And as we purify our intentions, and as we allow ourselves to be cleansed from defilement, we can take shelter under God's wing with unfailing certainty. Now, Nathaniel, again, as I said, he was an insightful and an honest disciple of Jesus Christ. He was considered an apostle. And I believe that this is here to give us a role model to help us to mend or repair the post-COVID world that we find ourselves in now. And a weapon or a dart aimed at a target, as I said, was used to destroy, and that word appears here as well, to destroy buildings in New York City back in 2001. And I believe that that was the start of the downfall that we find ourselves in today. And this was done, in fact, by modern day Hamans, okay? So through the court of public opinion, we as an awakened audience have grown stronger here together through this message. Now, we tend to agree that the destroying armies that are mentioned here in these fragments are to be relocated to the abyss or the bottomless pit. That is what we are told that we can expect in the end after all of this is said and done. Consider that all of these ideas were hidden in a reference book called the Strong's Concordance that was published in the late 1800s. So all of this is just being put out here right now. I just wanted to bring it to your attention as I found it to be very, very meaningful, all of that together. So we can look at slide number 6 right now. And what that's going to do is it's going to show us the similarities between the eclipses that took place in Esther's time. It was in the year 480 BC. You can see that it has a negative 479. This is basically because there was a 0 year in the calendar. But if you look at the dates, they are nearly exact dates that took place in Esther's time during the story that I just laid out for you. And by the way, the story where the Hamans of the world were dealt with severely, and they were dealt with in the very manner that they had laid out for the people of God. So this is very hopeful to us. It is about a turnaround of events that I believe is about to play out. Again, these are parallel dates. I see them as time windows that are connecting us to the Esther story and to the outcome of the Esther story. And the Esther story is deeply connected to the Jonah story, and it's done through different passages in the Bible. I'll point out a couple of them, but I want you to imagine the probability of all of this happening. It's just beyond my ability to comprehend. Now, I want to go ahead and give you some decodes that I came across that pertains to the story of Jonah, and that is what I was mentioning before, sackcloth and ashes. So I went ahead and I felt led to do a decode on the term sackcloth and ashes, just to see if anything would come up that might pertain to the time that we live in now. And I was pretty surprised at some of the things that came out. So according to simple gematria, the term sackcloth and ashes, it equals 163. Here's another one. Make America great again, 163. Yeah, that pertains to us. And I believe that part of what we have been going through is having to prepare for what is taking place. And many of us have been talking about the full armor of God. That's another 163. Here's something very near and dear to many of our hearts. End child trafficking, 173. I believe that that is first and foremost in everything that we are doing. You see, the cat is out of the bag. We know what's going on now, don't we? The seal is broken, 163. I would say that pertains to our time. The king is coming, another 163. And after that event takes place, the war is over, another 163. And of course, we would give all glory to God, 163. I believe that God's got this. And I do think that we have a responsibility to turn our attention and our focus to the God that we know has the ability to overcome everything that we are seeing play out in our world right now. We shall prevail, 163. Are you with me? 163. I believe you are. And I also am assuming that you believe in miracles. And that is the final 163 that I wanted to bring out to you from that particular aspect of gematria. There was one other one that I found that absolutely pertains to what we're talking about here tonight. The chances of these things are kind of staggering. Another very meaningful 163 that I found was actually in the Bible. It is in Matthew chapter 16, and it says this: you know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the times. Believe that this is speaking to people that are completely unaware of what we are aware of now. It goes on to say, an adulterous generation seeks after a sign, yet no sign will be given except for the sign of Jonah. Isn't it amazing that this term sackcloth and ashes has the same numerical value that led us to Matthew 16:3? So this probably means nothing at all. Just wanted to say that. But if you find meaning in it, you are in very good company. So we're going to go ahead and look at slide number 7 now. And what slide number 7 is going to show us are the 3 eclipse paths. We've looked at those last week. Again, this is forming 2 Hebrew letters. These are the Paleo Hebrew versions of these letters, Aleph and Tav. Tav is that big X that you see towards the right of the screen, and I went ahead and put the Aleph Tav down there in the blue box so you can see that it kind of looks like an anarchy symbol, or maybe an English A that tipped over. And then you have the X that marks the spot. There's so much to all of this I just can't get into. The area in the very center there of the X is an area known as Little Egypt. And there are a lot of deep, meaningful things that are going on in that area as well that I think are the reason for the attention in that area. One actually pertains to the idea of human sacrifice. This is something that is no longer going to be permitted to take place. So I'm going to give you an eclipse summary now, and I'm just going to point out some of the things that I found that were quite interesting that are involved with the date of April the 8th, 2024. It's going to be a busy day. There's going to be a lot going on. I just cannot understand the magnitude of why many of these things are taking place, but there is something definitely at play here from both the good side and the bad side as well. So when facing possible destruction and the message of this dark mark that has been placed on our country is giving us the same message that they were given in Nineveh. This is the message, the warning of possible destruction. When we are faced with that, I assure you, our politics won't matter. They do not matter at all. So we need to get over that. And I want to point out that if our leaders won't declare a national about face or national repentance in the 40-day Nineveh window after the April 8th event, we must do it ourselves. This is actually a call to change. This is not a religious call. I am not bent in that way. I love God. I understand what God is telling us, but I also understand that when we belong to Him, He has every ability to get our attention. And I believe that that is part of what He is doing right now. Let's look at a couple of the first and last symbols that I've noticed in here. We are looking at the Aleph, the letter Aleph, and the letter Tav. If you are not aware of that, this is the first and the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And this is basically all-inclusive. This is telling us that everything involved in the Hebrew alphabet is involved in this message right here. We are getting the whole thing, first and last. And we're getting them through this triad of 3 eclipses right here. Let's remember that Jesus made a statement, I am the Alpha and the Omega. As a Hebrew, he probably did not say that. He probably said, I am the Aleph Tav, meaning I am the beginning and the end. Remember when we were looking at Jupiter and Venus, how it will be looking to us during the path of totality, we noticed that that was another first and last as well. So it is the beginning and the end. And remember that last week when I talked to you in part one of these eclipses that came in, the first one that happened in August of 2017, actually exited the country where the Civil War began. The eclipse that is going to take place on April the 8th is going to enter into our country where the Civil War officially ended. There is another beginning and ending right there. Interestingly enough, one of these eclipses crosses over a city named Alpha, and another one crosses over a city named Omega. And believe it or not, in the middle there is a town called Rapture, Indiana. Now, again, I'm not calling the rapture. I believe that that is something that everybody has to make a decision about on their own. Now, I'm going to look at a couple 24 connections. If we look at this number 24, well, of course, we're in the year 2024. That's significant. If we look at Psalm 124, this connects us to the Jonah Esther story as well. And it does it in this way. Actually, Psalm 124 is recited during Purim, and that was just happened in our recent past. And there's a passage there that connects us. Jonah connects to Esther in this way. It says in Psalm 124, if the Lord had not been on our side when people attacked us, they would have swallowed us alive, and the waters would have engulfed us. Very interesting symbolic language that connects Esther and Jonah together. Now, we also have Matthew 24, and that is a chapter describing to the T the times that we are living in right now. Another 24 connection through 2024. Well, we are in the Hebrew year 5784. And that is the year of the open door. So there's much more to it than that, but it is the year of the open door. This is showing us a way out. Now, another interesting aspect to this eclipse that will be taking place on the 8th of April is there will be a 5-planet alignment on that day. I guess everything wants to get involved in this. We will have Earth, Venus, Neptune, Saturn, and Mars apparently lining up on the 8th of April. I want to tell you, I am not at all scared of this sky message. I'm not even concerned about the devil comet making an appearance. As I pointed out, the simple gematria for the official term, Ponsbrook Comet, means prepare yourself and 10 days of darkness. I don't know that there's going to be 10 days of darkness. I'm hoping that it will be much shorter than that. But here's another strange aspect to the April 8th event. NASA will be launching a mission. It's called the APEP mission. And this is 3 rockets that will be launched up to take some measurements or readings, they say. Interesting that this is based on an Egyptian serpent deity, and that is a deity of death and destruction. So we've got all of these dark things that are being projected on us here, along with all of the light things that I'm telling you. Another very interesting aspect about the 8th of April, or thereabouts, very close, we are being told that we will be experiencing billions of cicadas that will be making their appearance. Now, having lived in Tennessee through, I think it was the 13-year cicadas that came up, those things are everywhere, and they will be everywhere. And one of the groups that will be making an appearance, by the way, has not been seen since the year 1803. So is there a connection to the eclipse with that? Well, I looked in the Strong's Concordance at 1803, didn't see it, but I flipped it to the Greek number, word number 381, which is the reverse. And that, believe it or not, is these words that mean kindle, to light something up, or to set something on fire. I believe that this is very much eclipse speech. So another strange aspect is that on that day of all days, CERN, with its Shiva Apollyon connection, and some of you will understand that. If not, you can Google that. This is also it's a a deity of death and destruction, death and rebirth, to be fair. But this is all about change and making something completely new. I would say that this is very disturbing. CERN is intending to open a dimensional portal on that day of all days. What could possibly go wrong, right? Now, it's debatable whether or not they are going to be able to accomplish any of that, but we will see. Interestingly enough, we also have the National Guard being deployed on that day. And another connection that I find to be deeply, deeply meaningful is that we are hearing a lot of talk now about the red heifer sacrifice being planned. Now, this has to take place in order to cleanse the temple that is being talked about being reactivated and rebuilt. And again, the temple, remember, initially was the tabernacle in the wilderness that was basically made of tents. So it could become activated once again temporarily while the permanent facility is being constructed. So this could also potentially cause more of an international conflict, as you well may gather. And one of the last things that I want to mention, first of all, remember when I told you that the Great American Eclipse, the first one that happened in 2017, had not happened going from West Coast to East Coast. That had not happened since the year 1776, which of course is the birth of our nation. Interestingly enough, 888 times 2 equals 1776. Well, what is the significance of that? 888, believe it or not, is the name for Jesus in the Greek language. And so 888 times 2, well, 2, of course, speaks about the two witnesses. And we are always looking for the second coming. So there's two comings predicted as well. Also, we have had a recent attack on Russia that happened just the day prior to Purim. And then the day directly following, there was a betrayal of Israel in terms of U.S. non-support. All right, these are things that affect us as a nation. And finally, I want to point out one of the stranger ones, and that is the Simpsons predictions in the year 2024 of the advent of a black hole in World War III. Now, I'm not buying into any of that, and I don't believe that you should as well. But I just wanted to point out all of these very strange connections to the date of April the 8th. I wanted to point out the good ones as well as the negative ones so that you are well aware of what is being projected upon us. I ask you to take the high road and to have faith within yourself that we have the ability to get through this, and we believe that we are going to see the beautiful world, the bright future that we have all been anticipating and looking forward to. So there is a bit of a connection to how God sees us in a situation like this. And we can look at the last slide, slide number 8. And this, of course, is a reference to 2 Chronicles 7:14. And again, I did mention this last week. It is very familiar to many of us. It says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven. Then I will forgive. Then I will heal their land. So what I wanted to point out is this is a conditional statement. It is an if and then statement. So if my people who are called by my name, I pointed it out last time, going to bring it to your attention again. This is not talking about any particular religion or any particular faith. It is talking about those who will align themselves with that name that I showed you at the beginning. The name Yod He Vav He, some will refer to that as Jehovah, some Yahweh. I prefer to call it that name Yahuwah. This is all the same synonymous deity that we know as God. This is what we are being asked to do by God. We are being asked to pray about this. And we are being asked to seek his face. When you seek someone's face, you want to get up close to them and you want to get to know them better, don't you? And this is what we are faced with right now. Finding out where we are at with this, what we intend to do with this. And the condition is that in order for us to see the turnaround, we have to go ahead and do these things. Humble, pray, seek God, and turn from the things that we know that we should not be doing. All this is about where we are right now in the grand scheme of things. So I want to end my presentation there, but I'm going to continue with one further thing that is much more positive in nature. I just wanted to say that I hope that that was bogan enough for some of my Australian friends and my European friends. I love you. I say that with great respect. I realize that this whole thing to do with that name, it is a cultural difference that we have. And so I take no offense to it whatsoever. I'm going to end on a positive note right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a story that I was instructed to write and to share with my tribe that I meet with twice a week in my team. And what this is a, I'm calling it a modern day parable. And I'm just going to go ahead and have to look over here on the screen, and I'm going to read it to you as I close. This is called Spring Forward, a modern day parable. And it begins like this. He took the blind man by the hand and brought him outside of the village. After healing his blindness, he asked him, "Do you see anything?" Regaining his sight, the man said, "I see people, but they look like trees walking around." This comes from Mark chapter 23. Well, I want you to imagine for a moment that you are an acorn who has just been planted in the ground. Now, the last thing that you remember was seeing your family of acorns being scattered all over the ground in a brand new place that none of you had ever seen before. In the confusion that this initially caused you, because you were trying to imagine what could possibly be happening in that moment, you suddenly have a strong sensation of falling yourself. And then you realize that you're being covered up with something. And the first thing that you notice is feeling pressure from this covering that has just been placed on top of you. Then the pressure seems to intensify until you find yourself completely locked in place with zero ability to move. Suddenly it occurs to you that it's completely pitch black and you're having a difficult time hearing much of anything. You try to cry out, but it tastes and smells like dirt, and it feels kind of cool after recently being dried by the warmth of the sun. There's no way to breathe in this place either, yet you remain calm because you have an inner knowing that your acorn family is somewhere nearby. But you're helpless to hear them or to even communicate with them in any way, and you long to be able to talk with them again. Suddenly, you have a sensation of becoming soaking wet, and it feels really cold to you. Just yesterday, you were with all of your acorn brothers and sisters on the ground in the shade of your mother, until a young man gathered you all up, placing you in a well-worn leather pouch. Now today, just one day later, you find yourself totally alone and isolated in an unfamiliar place, in darkness and in solitary confinement. There's no real sense of direction, and you feel frightened to think you may never see your family or the sun ever again. Then you have an overwhelming flash of insight, and this flash of insight tells you that the only way out of this dark place, and your only hope to reunite with your family, is through ongoing internal growth. There's a knowing within you that the water saturating you is causing a transformation deep inside of you, and you feel an odd internal motion beginning to take place within you. You rapidly develop a new dependence on this rainwater because it now feels like liquid crystal life to you, a sensation you never experienced when among your mother's branches. But you notice that with passing time, the rain seems to slowly go away, and your first reaction is to resist this. There's a concern that you may never experience it ever again either. Then suddenly the next day, the water returns. And after many days of this cycle, you realize a need to grow in two completely different directions, and that strangely, this somehow just feels right to you. Before long, after just weeks, you begin to hear sounds getting closer to you, and you're beginning to see faint rays of light above you. The pressure you've been feeling is getting less intense, and you're convinced that everything is about to change. You're absolutely certain of this, but you aren't clear about what could possibly bring this about. The very next day, you realize that there is something happening both above and below you all at the same time. And everything within you suddenly wants to jump with all of your might. And in a moment, you find that you have sprung forth into an almost familiar place, although everything about it now seems much different. You're once again reunited with the sun. And after the wonder of all of it begins to subside, you notice to your great surprise that you're slowly being surrounded once again by many of your former acorn siblings who also have just sprung forward, each of them telling their own unique, similar story as your own. Now, you're also excited to see each other again, and in this all new way, as you are all looking so much more grown up and so much more alive. And as time progresses, your collective built-in vision of joining each other in a continuous reach for the sky, well, that intensifies. There are times when intense weather, insects, and the lack of water cause you to question your ability to survive. Yet your flexibility and determination always allows you to do so. And many of your strongest brothers and sisters also spring forward to massive heights right alongside of you. You all eventually become home for the birds of the air and shade for others in the heat of the summer. You provide great value in each season, and you live long, prosperous, and prestigious lives. And towards the end, you begin to share stories from your youth with the new saplings springing forth at the base of your own mighty trunk. Through wise whispers of winds in your branches, you tell tales of once being a frightened sapling yourself. And during one of your most fearful moments, how a gorgeous butterfly landed on one of your tiny branches to share her story of having lived in a nearby tree as a multi-legged caterpillar. And having had an overwhelming sensation to create a cocoon around herself one day, without even knowing why, she told you how after going through a complete transformation inside of that dark place, until it felt like the time had finally come to break out of that tiny prison, she discovered in an instant an entire light world expanding before her, all for her to enjoy and explore. And as she set herself free from her dark confinement, there was a magical realization of the unexpected beauty she had become. As that magnificently beautiful butterfly was carried off with the wind, her message had given you courage to continue with your own ongoing transformation. This left you with renewed hope to hold on to, and it helped you to dig your roots in just a little bit deeper that day. You lived as a mighty oak tree for 200 years, until you were harvested for your highly prized hardwood. And you now live on in other completely new and transformational forms. Part of you now is a stately dwelling for a family of 5. Another part of you is within a mighty ship that can cross oceans. Yet another portion of you has been crafted into handles for fine tools used to build important things. You are now a sturdy wooden chest of drawers that holds valuable jewelry. And in another form, you are well-crafted furniture in a high-rise penthouse suite. In the end, your life purpose and your reach as a small seed was spectacular and highly impressive. Your true essence may have moved to the higher life realms, yet your existence here lives on in highly meaningful ways. Such is the 3D circle of life. Now, in the higher realms, we learn that we are one with all things, clearly seeing that separation was only a clever illusion. In higher dimensional reality, the true scope of our reach is far beyond any mere earthly consideration, and that our reality as a mighty oak tree was only one expression of who we truly are. We are all being called to spring forward now into a new growth season. The initial shock of transformational change can at first seem completely unnerving, even scary. Yet with each additional day of discovery, we may find that we accept these changes as having been needful in order to transform ourselves through more advanced ways of looking at our lives, causing us to branch out in much more meaningful ways. The signs of great change surround us all now, and we're being asked to trust. We're being asked to align ourselves with creation in our true purpose, in our true life calling. May we all spring forward together in the most profound ways to find ourselves completely and utterly unrecognizable in the true beauty that we have finally become. With that, I want to thank you so much for your attention, and I will now turn this back over to you, Teresa.
Well, that was wonderful. I'm so sorry that we did not get to go live on Rumble. It is recorded and it was live on YouTube, so that's good. Some people got to see it, but we've got to work out the bugs, and so does Rumble because we're on their new streaming platform. But you know what I was thinking today is we know that this eclipse is connected to a time of repentance. And I was thinking about when people go through the fire like we have, to then, like, if they feel like they're being browbeaten with, you need to repent, then it can be just one more heavy load. But you know how I saw it for the first time? A time of repentance for your family to come to you, to stop the direction they're going, turn around, and run into your arms.
Yeah.
So that's what I call repentance right there.
Yes, it's beautiful.
Apologies for what they did to you and how long they did it and the loss that you incurred because of it. And I guarantee you, when they come running with tears streaming down their faces in the deepest humility that is known to mankind, you will have no trouble whatsoever opening your arms to them, because it will be a supernatural, divine, miraculous thing that the world has never seen before. You know, I was at a meeting in Kansas City when Paul Cain read a list of sins that pastors commit. And there were, I think, 10,000 pastors there. And when he finished reading the list, the pastors began to pray, and they were wailing in repentance and sorry for the things that they had been doing, that, even stretching the truth to make a good story, and all kinds of things like that, even if it wasn't what everybody thinks of right off. But it was a beautiful sign. It was they were just weeping uncontrollably, and the roar that came up from that group was intense. And I believe that the earth will hear that sound of a roar coming up from your family members.
Yes.
They just are so in such remorse at what they did and what they missed out on. That they, not only what they did to you, but also that they missed out on the greatest time of history by being stubborn and blind and, negative. So, yeah, so take heart, because I believe it's not for you so much as it is for them.
Correct. Yes, I agree with that. I agree with that message. And I feel that, like Jonah, took 3 days inside of a whale to come to his senses. And yet he did turn around, and he did come around. And I believe that is the hope that we have. Many of us have lost family members, not spoken to us as a result of everything that just took place. And then even after, I would say for the most part, being proven right, we still are finding ourselves isolated in many cases. So I do see this message ultimately as a message of great hope. Not just hope, it's a message of great hope. And it's not that we all have to come to that place like some others do. I think on some levels we all are trying to get everything together the best we can. But many of us have done this work already. We've been doing this work for quite a long time now. And so hopefully we are going to see a return, a great return of our loved ones, and a great return just of us looking at life and approaching life from a more moral standpoint. Okay, we can still have fun and be moral, and we can absolutely still have the greatest time that we've ever had, and that's what we are expecting. With everything that we are looking for in the future, I see hope, and I see positivity, and I see us as that butterfly. We've all gone through the darkness of the cocoon stage, and now here we are, about to spread our wings in all of our glory and splendor and beauty. And that is really the the ultimate message that I wanted to bring to your audience here tonight. And thank you so much for allowing me to do so.
And so well done. I was watching the chat and they were all saying, what a great message. One thing I want to address is the fear of catastrophe. They're saying something about California, judgment, and all these prophets that preach and speak judgment. I resist that with everything within me. I don't believe in that. The thing is that we've already been through the tribulation. We've already suffered great agony to the point of no return, like we can hardly make it. And I do not believe that a good and loving God would say, hey, let's go to the promised land. But on the way there, I'm just going to knock you, to kingdom come.
Yeah.
I'm just bludgeon you, and you're going to lose half the nation, and California's going to fall into the ocean and be done with them and all this kind of stuff. And I lived in California, and I know those Christians prayed for like 50 years for their country. And the thing is that it never was about them. It was about the government and how they lied. And the new California that's rumbling behind the scenes has changed the face of California. And we have to believe in her and believe that God is not going to leave her defenseless and allow her to be ruined when she's already suffered so much. And so I resist all of those prophecies and memes and videos and anybody trying to prove that our God would begin something and not complete it, or begin something and then like, well, too bad for you. I tricked you. You're not going to the promised land. You're going to, you're going to be annihilated. You're going to be, destroyed and judged. And he doesn't judge the righteous.
Right.
There's nothing to judge. And
I believe he judges us innocent, actually, Teresa. And don't forget that the message of these eclipses are pointing us to very specific Bible stories. And what we find in the story of Jonah is how to not be destroyed, right? And what we hear in the story of Esther is what will happen to those who pursue us to the point of death. They want to take us out. That's what they've been doing. That was all turned around. And it also is pointing us to the Passover and the Red Sea moment, which we are coming up on right now. That is another story of great deliverance. And that is what we need to be focusing on. It is not going to end the way that many are saying. It is going to end in our ability to change this world, to change this simulation, if you will, and make it be what it was meant to be from the beginning. I said last week that one of the definitions for the word light, when God said, let there be light in Genesis 1:3, one of those definitions is cheerfulness and happiness. God was saying at the very beginning, let there be happiness. And that is what we're looking for.
Yep, I agree 100%. All right, everybody, we're going to take a 10-minute pause and end up at Tressie Trek Chat living room. And I did put the link in there, but you can just type in to the Telegram search bar Tressie Trek Chat and you'll find it. All right, so we'll meet you over there. And will you be joining us, Tom, over there so that they can ask their questions to you?
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to be there.
Awesome. Okay, we'll see you in just a bit.
Okay, see you there.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.